I arrived before sunset, the kind of twilight that turns snow blue and makes everything look gentler than it is. Jenna's porch light blinked weakly, already half covered in ice. I remember thinking how fitting that was, brightness buried under frost. Inside, warmth fought its way out through the walls. Laughter, the clink of glasses, the dull thud of music too safe to offend. I stood there for a moment at the front door, my breath ghosting into the air, holding the wrapped gift like it meant something. Like I meant something. The purse had cost more than I'd ever admit. Not because it was designer, though it was, but because it was chosen with care. I'd remembered every brand Taylor had casually name-dropped, every color she paused on during one of her endless influencer reels. She'd never know that. She'd never ask how long I'd stood in that store, second-guessing, wondering if this might be the one thing that made her look at me with something other than apathy. I stepped inside. Jenna didn't greet me. Too busy in the kitchen, pouring wine and pretending the evening was going exactly as planned. Taylor and her cousins were curled up around the fireplace, all soft sweaters and loud sarcasm, scrolling their phones like the people in the room were background noise. I cleared my throat and walked toward Taylor. She barely glanced up. "I got you something." The box was heavy, elegant. She took it without thanks, slid a manicured nail under the tape, and peeled the paper off in strips like it was a task to endure. When she opened the lid, her face didn't change. Then she reached in, lifted the purse by its strap, and let it flop down onto the couch beside her. No inspection, no reaction, like I'd handed her junk mail. "Oh," she said, flat as drywall. "Cool." Then she smirked, that slow, deliberate kind of smirk that means it's about to get mean, and looked around the room like she was setting up for a punchline. "You're just the guy who pays for wrapping paper." The words hit harder than she could ever know. Not loud, not screamed, but just loud enough for the room to go silent. Loud enough for her aunt to pause mid-sentence. Loud enough for the lights on the Christmas tree to blink like warning signs. Nobody laughed. Nobody corrected her. They just kept sipping wine and pretending that nothing important had happened. That I hadn't just been reduced to a walking wallet with no face, no feelings, no place at the table. I stood there, smiling like a fool. A tight, polite, frozen kind of smile. The kind you wear when you've just been insulted in public and everyone's watching to see if you'll crack. Jenna looked over once. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, just turned back to the bottle she was holding and poured herself another glass, as if the evening was still unfolding perfectly. That was the moment. That's when it happened. Not a break. Not a snap. I didn't feel rage. Didn't feel anything, really. Something inside me didn't break. It shut off. Like a switch. Like a circuit finally blown after years of too much current. I felt the warmth drain out of my chest. And in its place, a kind of cold understanding settled. I wasn't family. I wasn't even background noise. I was a subscription. I sat through the rest of the evening in silence. Taylor opened more gifts, none of them cheap, and giggled over each one as if her friends were watching through the walls. Her boyfriend FaceTimed in for a minute, and she showed him the purse like it was some random thing she'd gotten from the store. "My mom's husband got me this," she said, and my name never made it past her lips. Her mom's husband. Not stepdad. Not Mike. Just some anonymous accessory to her lifestyle. I sat on the edge of the armchair, a drink untouched in my hand, watching the tree blink like a dying heart monitor. Around me, the house buzzed with artificial cheer. Red bows, garland, candles, Instagram moments waiting to happen. Everyone played their role. Everyone but me. Because I didn't have a role. I had a function. And functions don't belong in photographs. I started thinking back. Rewinding the year, month by month. Seeing it all in a different light. The study trip to New York in September, the one I'd helped fund after weeks of Jenna's nudging and Taylor's strategic silence. She'd said it was for a communications seminar. I believed her. 2 weeks later, I saw her tagged in a rooftop bar photo, drink in hand, not a textbook in sight. The lost debit card in October, followed by a carefully worded text asking if she could borrow another one of mine, just until hers was replaced. The replacement never came, but the Uber Eats charges kept arriving. Lattes, smoothie bowls, $19 salads, twice a day. I confronted Jenna once. She looked exhausted. "She's under pressure," she said. "Don't push her." So I didn't. I paid tuition, rent, streaming services, petty things, essential things. All of it, hoping that if I just kept providing, eventually she'd look at me and see more than a funding source. I told myself this is what stepfathers do. They step in. They endure. But what I really was a spreadsheet. A line item. Income, outflow, zero appreciation. I could count the times she'd said thank you on one hand. I could count the times she'd looked me in the eye even quicker. There's a different kind of loneliness when you're ignored in a room full of people you're supposed to belong to. It's worse than being alone. Because at least when you're alone, there's no lie. The rest of the evening blurred. Someone suggested charades. Taylor rolled her eyes and disappeared upstairs. Jenna made eggnog and acted like nothing was wrong. The other adults, her sister, her mother, that cousin I could never remember the name of, drifted through conversations I wasn't part of. Eventually, I stood and slipped away. My boots were still damp by the door. I laced them slowly, taking my time, not because I wanted to stay, but because I knew when I left no one would notice. Outside, the cold slapped me like truth. I walked to my car with the kind of clarity that only comes when the noise finally stops. I wasn't a father figure. I wasn't a mentor. I wasn't even a disappointment. I was a transaction. And that night something ended. Not with a fight. Not with fireworks. But with a smirk. A tossed purse. A daughter who didn't see me as anything at all. And a wife who watched it happen and chose her wine over her words. The house was still quiet when I woke. The kind of quiet that feels dishonest. Not peace. Not rest. Just the shallow silence that comes after a performance, when everyone retreats to their corners and pretends nothing real happened. Outside, frost clung to the cars. Ice like armor. I stared out the window for a while, coffee untouched in my hand, and wondered how long I'd been asleep with my eyes open. How many years I'd been giving without asking, offering without being invited. The purse, the smirk, the silence. I couldn't forget any of it. By 7, I was sitting at my desk in the study. The same desk where I'd filled out Taylor's FAFSA forms. The same desk where I'd paid her first dorm deposit, set up auto-pay for her textbooks, responded to her school's emails when she forgot. The same desk where I'd once printed a note from her professor about a missed midterm and defended her to Jenna without knowing the full story. I logged in. Bank first. The app opened too easily, like muscle memory. I checked it 1,000 times over the years. Always scanning for charges, payments, late fees I'd cover without being asked. Always tracking her life, making sure it stayed afloat. Taylor's debit card, the one I'd given her for emergencies, was still active, still linked, still draining me. Paused. Done. Next, her tuition payments. The school's portal was a mess of forms, but I knew the way through, like a father would, like I always had. I sent a short message through the student account. Effective immediately, financial sponsorship is withdrawn. Do not process further charges. This account is no longer backed by M. Langston. Responsibility must be reassigned to the student or legal guardian. It was the kind of message that lands like a blade, formal, polite, and devastating. Then I checked the automatic rent payments. I'd been covering her off-campus apartment for 6 months now. Jenna had said it was temporary, just until Taylor found a job near campus. Paused. The screen asked, "Are you sure you want to cancel recurring payments?" I clicked yes. Yes, I was sure. I sat back and stared at the screen. What should have felt like revenge didn't. It felt like inventory, like finally closing tabs that had been open too long, like unplugging from a system that fed on quiet endurance. At 10:17 a.m., I got the first alert. Taylor's card had been declined at her campus cafe. A $7 iced latte with extra cold foam and oat milk. Denied. The app lit up with the failed transaction like a spark. I didn't smile. Not yet. I just watched. By noon, the second alert came. Dorm access system had issued a billing hold. She tried to use her university login to confirm housing for next semester. The screen had frozen. The system flagged the account. Sponsored term ended. Contact billing office. A third alert, this one from her student portal. An email copy forwarded to me automatically from the administrative office. Your current financial guarantor has withdrawn sponsorship. Please arrange alternate payment or risk suspension of registration. It didn't take long. At 12:38 p.m., my phone buzzed. I let it ring. Then another. Voicemail. Not from Taylor. From Jenna. Her voice was sharp. Already angry. Like I'd broken some invisible contract. What did you do? She snapped. She just called me. Her card's not working. Her dorms locked her out of next term. You can't just shut it all down, Mike. What the hell is going on? I listened to it twice. Her tone was familiar. The kind you use on someone you expect to obey. Like I'd short-circuited a routine. Like dignity was a mistake I needed to correct. I didn't call back. I didn't explain. Because something had changed. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was free. They had wanted me to know my place. Now I knew it. Not family. Not father. Just finance. Around 2, my phone vibrated again. Taylor this time. A text, not a call. She never called. It was just a joke. I didn't mean it. That was all. Not, I'm sorry. Not, thank you for everything. Not, I was wrong. Just a deflection. A rewrite. A manipulation wrapped in casual lowercase letters. The way only teenagers can pull off. Feigning innocence after stabbing you with precision. I didn't respond. By 4, Jenna came home. Not early enough to seem panicked, but early enough to show she was ready for a conversation. She held a pie box in one hand, the kind from the grocery store that pretends to be homemade, and wore the same soft cardigan she always pulled out when she wanted to soften bad news. I was sitting in the kitchen, the same spot I'd been the night I offered to co-sign Taylor's first apartment lease. I hadn't even been asked. I'd just done it. Jenna walked in, set the box down gently, and didn't meet my eyes. Mike, she said, her voice syrupy. Can we talk? I nodded, but I didn't stand. She sat across from me, hands folded, eyes careful. She's young, she said. You know that. She's still figuring things out. That joke, it wasn't right, but she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said simply, so am I. I'm learning too. She blinked. Learning what? I'm learning I'm not a bank wearing a wedding band. That landed. Her posture changed. She drew back slightly, as if she wasn't expecting clarity. Just guilt. As if her plan depended on me regretting instead of realizing. She made a mistake. Jenna tried again. She's just under a lot of pressure. I tilted my head. And what pressure was I under when I paid for her to spend spring break in Miami after she failed 2 midterms? Silence. What pressure was I under? I continued. When I bought her a second laptop because she said the first one was too slow. What pressure was I under when she ran through $900 worth of DoorDash in 1 month and told me, don't worry, I'll make it up to you? But never did. More silence. She looked down. You can't just cut her off, she finally whispered. I didn't, I replied calmly. I just ended the subscription. That night I got another alert. Taylor had tried to use my backup credit card, the one I'd given her for emergencies 2 years ago. I'd forgotten it still existed, buried in her Apple Pay wallet. The charge was for $126 at a boutique clothing site. Declined. I checked the app. Locked. Deleted. She never texted again that night. But I smiled. Not because I wanted her to hurt, but because I had finally stopped bleeding for people who didn't know they were cutting me. It was day 3 when he arrived. I heard the car before I saw it. A leased BMW, silver, spotless, the kind that says I'm doing well, even when the payments are late. The tires crunched across our icy driveway like they didn't belong there. And maybe they didn't. I was in the garage, fixing the latch on an old toolbox I hadn't touched in months. Not because it mattered, just because I needed something in my hands other than regret. Then I heard the door slam. Footsteps. And that voice. Hey, we need to talk. I didn't turn right away. I already knew who it was. Zach, Taylor's biological father. The ghost in our house. He had a habit of showing up just often enough to remind everyone he still existed. Birthdays, graduations, rare holidays when he'd swoop in with a gift too expensive to be practical. The kind of man who buys affection in moments, never realizing that affection needs maintenance. I turned slowly. He was taller than I remembered. Clean-shaven. Puffed up like he was preparing for a negotiation he thought he could win. He wore a jacket that probably cost more than the rent I just canceled. He didn't smile. "This is a family thing," he said. "You didn't have to go nuclear." I stayed where I was. Calm. Cold. "Have you ever paid for a textbook?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "I've been paying her tuition for 3 years. Rent, cards, food, everything. You ever cover a semester? A book? A sandwich?" He shifted. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." I let that sit. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His breath fogged in the cold. His fingers twitched like he wanted to point but hadn't decided whether I deserved the gesture. "You blindsided her," he said eventually. "She's just a kid." "No, she's a young adult who made an adult decision. And so did I." He looked around, maybe expecting Jenna to show up and rescue the conversation. Maybe expecting me to cave. But I didn't. I've spent years biting my tongue, swallowing disrespect, nodding along while others got credit for my labor. I've nodded through holidays when Taylor ignored my gifts, smiled through dinners where I wasn't part of the conversation, endured years of watching Zach pop in and get treated like royalty while I stood in the shadows, holding the invoice. "No more." "You want to fix it?" I asked. "Then pay for her dorm, her classes, her wine tastings disguised as internships. It's your name on her birth certificate, not mine." He stared at me, and in his eyes, I saw it. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of the invoice. The real one. Because it's easy to be a dad in pictures. It's easy to post birthday selfies and drop by with new earbuds. But when the bills come due, when the university needs $6,000 before Monday, that's when the posing ends. He didn't answer, just turned and walked back to his car. The engine started, then idled. He didn't leave right away. Maybe he was calling Jenna. Maybe Taylor. Maybe just sitting there, trying to figure out how a man he never respected had the power to ruin his illusion. I went back to my toolbox. Later that night, Jenna came back. No wine this time. No pie. No soft cardigan. Just eyes red from crying and a tone sharpened by panic. "You destroyed what we built," she said, her voice low. I didn't rise from the couch. "No," I replied. "I stopped financing the illusion." She sat down slowly, across from me, as if the furniture between us could bridge the distance. "You let her humiliate me," I said quietly. "And you said nothing. She's just confused." "No," I said again. "She's trained." That made her flinch. "She's been trained by you, by him, by years of silence to believe I'm optional. That I'm a resource, not a person. That I don't need respect because I'll keep showing up anyway. That I'll keep paying, smiling, driving, fixing, without asking for anything but space at the table." She said nothing. I leaned forward. "You think this started with the purse?" She looked up, confused. "That was just the surface," I said. "That smirk, that joke. That was the punchline to a long-running story I wasn't even allowed to edit." She swallowed. "I'm not angry, Jenna. I'm not screaming. I'm just done being discounted." She closed her eyes. "She's your daughter," she whispered. "No," I said flatly. "She's yours. And his. I was just the credit card between you." Her voice cracked. "She doesn't understand. But you do. And you watched. And that's worse." Jenna cried then, not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind where guilt finally peeks through pride. But I didn't move. I didn't console. Because those tears were late. They were 3 years, 6 semesters, and $41,000 late. The next day, Taylor tried again. Different approach this time. A softer tone. "Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just joking. You know, I appreciate everything. Can we please just talk? I read it twice, then replied, you said I was the guy who pays for wrapping paper. I canceled the subscription. Gifts are over. She didn't text again. At noon, I got a call from the university's billing office. They needed an updated guarantor or confirmation of payment within 48 hours, or her classes would be dropped. I asked if her biological father had responded yet. They said no. I said good luck. Later that afternoon, Jenna came home early. No work excuses, no errands. Just sat down across from me and asked one question. What do you want? The honesty caught me off guard. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I wanted the silence to mean something this time. Finally, I said, I want to stop being the only adult in this house who pays for everyone else's mistakes. She nodded slowly. No argument, no lecture. That silence? That one I accepted. But by evening, the storm returned. Taylor showed up. In person. Puffy jacket. No makeup. Eyes ringed red, either from crying or bad sleep. She didn't come to apologize. Not really. She came to negotiate. Look, she said. I know I was out of line. I was just trying to be funny. Came out wrong. But you can't just cut me off. That's not fair. I said nothing. She pushed forward, tone rising. Do you know how much crap is happening right now? My roommates are freaking out, the school's threatening to boot me, and Dad says he can't cover the whole thing. You're just gonna sit there and let my life fall apart? I leaned back. Your dad says he can't cover it? She blinked. He's working on it, but like he didn't know this was coming. I smiled. He should've. I stood. You called me the guy who pays for wrapping paper. Now you're seeing how much that paper held together. She went quiet. You thought I was optional, I continued. But optional things don't keep the lights on. Optional things don't send tuition before the deadline, or fix your car battery at midnight, or lie awake trying to figure out how to make rent and groceries stretch in the same week. She folded her arms. A defense she barely believed in. I said I was sorry. No, I corrected. You said you didn't mean it. That's not the same. I paused. And if you didn't mean it, then it means you don't even know how to measure the damage you caused. Which is worse. She exhaled hard. Frustrated. Scared. Then she said the thing she hadn't said in years. Please. Just that. Please. But it was too late. I nodded toward the door. This is where your real father steps up. Or doesn't. Either way, my part's done. She stood there a while. Then left. The door clicked behind her, soft and hollow. And in that moment, the silence didn't ache. It healed. It snowed again on the 7th day. Not the kind of snow that clogs streets or collapses trees. Just a quiet curtain of white that fell over the porch, the driveway, the brittle lawn we never had time to water. The kind of snow that softens the world until it almost looks forgivable. Inside, the house was silent. No music. No lights. No fake laughter spilling from the living room. The ornaments still hung from the tree like forgotten promises, dull and untouched. Jenna hadn't turned the lights on since the night Taylor left in tears. I didn't ask where Taylor had gone. I didn't need to. She wasn't in school, wasn't in her apartment, wasn't with Zach. He had made that clear in a brief, pathetic follow-up text. I tried, man. Just can't swing it right now. Of course not. He was a shadow. And now his daughter lived in the dark. I sat at the kitchen table with a black cup of coffee and nothing else. No breakfast. No phone. No hope for reconciliation. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't need any of it. Because this wasn't emptiness. It was clarity. People always assume quiet means loneliness. They think if a man sits in a room alone, he must be broken. But they don't understand the exhaustion of being surrounded by voices that never listen. Of waking up each day in a house full of people who expect you to serve, to provide, to disappear once the work is done. Silence, for me, wasn't absence. It was peace. There were no bills being forwarded to my inbox. No sudden charges for sushi delivery or Sephora orders. No midday calls from Jenna asking if I could Just cover this one last thing until payday. No messages from Taylor saying, "Can you send it to me through Zelle?" Like I was her personal treasury. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of old floorboards, and my breathing slow, steady mine. Jenna moved through the house like a ghost. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand I reverse anything. I think, deep down, she knew I wouldn't, but she was still holding on to the performance. She cooked more, folded laundry with military precision, asked how my day was going, words she hadn't said in months. I answered in sentences, never paragraphs. She stopped mentioning Taylor. I stopped asking about her. But the space she left behind wasn't vacant, it was telling. Her absence echoed in the hallways. Her silence hung over the dinner table like a chandelier missing its bulb. Every time Jenna set 2 plates instead of 3, she hesitated, like habit hadn't caught up to reality. And every time I said nothing. One night, Jenna brought down a box from Taylor's old room. She set it on the coffee table and sat beside it for an hour, not opening it, just staring. Her fingers rested on the lid like she wanted to feel guilt without speaking it. I didn't move. She turned to me finally. "Do you think I failed her?" she asked. I took my time. "No," I said. "You taught her." She looked confused. "Taught her what?" "How to treat people who show up." That landed. She didn't cry. She didn't fight. She just sat there, breathing through the truth. Because somewhere along the way, Jenna had become a witness to her own daughter's entitlement. And instead of stopping it, she became its alibi. I wasn't blameless. I'd let it happen too. But I thought that love, real, unconditional, sacrifice-built love, would be its own reward. I was wrong. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's indentured servitude. And I'd served long enough. The next morning, I got a voicemail from Taylor. Not a text. Not a joke. Her voice was raw, quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I'm at Kayla's. I'm figuring stuff out. I'm not asking for anything, I swear. I didn't realize how much you handled. I guess I thought it would just stay the same no matter what. Anyway, I hope you're okay." I listened to it twice, not because I was moved, because I was measuring the words. There was no apology, no ownership. Just recognition, the beginnings of a lesson, maybe, or maybe just fear. I didn't respond, because I wasn't a lesson plan. I wasn't her father anymore. The next few days passed like winter does, slowly with repetition. Jenna stopped cooking. We moved like roommates, polite, efficient, cold. Sometimes, I caught her staring at the tree, lights still unplugged. She never turned them back on. The day after New Year's, she tried again. We were in the kitchen. She was peeling an orange. I was wiping down the counter. Mundane domestic choreography. "I never meant for you to feel used," she said. I didn't look at her. "You didn't have to mean it," I said. "You just had to let it happen." She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't, because by then, even she knew that intention wasn't currency anymore. I'd spent years trading my value for imagined futures, birthday candles, graduation photos, Father's Day cards that never came. No more. That night, I boxed up the Christmas decorations. Alone. Jenna didn't ask to help. I think she understood it wasn't about tinsel or ornaments. It was a funeral. For every illusion we had decorated our lives with. The box with Taylor's name went last. The purse, the one she'd tossed aside without looking, was still there. I hadn't returned it. Hadn't repurposed it. I left it in the box. A reminder that no matter how much something costs, it's worthless to someone who doesn't value it. I stored everything in the attic, shut the door, and with it shut the season. 2 days later, I packed a bag. Jenna didn't ask where I was going. She watched from the doorway as I zipped it shut, folded a sweater over my shoulder, and placed my keys on the kitchen table. "I need time," I said. "Alone. To remember who I was before I became someone else's background character." She nodded, not like she understood, but like she knew there was no negotiation left. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't peel out of the driveway or take one last dramatic look at the house. I just drove. No music. No GPS. Just highway and thought. I checked into a motel 2 towns over. Cheap, quiet, warm enough, and for the first time in years, I slept through the night. No ping of payment alerts. No dread of tuition deadlines. No tension in my jaw from holding back what I should have said years ago. Just sleep. Clean. Simple. Mine. The next morning, I sat in the motel lobby with burnt coffee and a newspaper. Nobody knew my name. Nobody asked for money. And I realized this was peace. Not the peace you find in vacations or weekend escapes, but the kind that only comes after extraction. After walking out of a house that took and still whispered more, I got a message from Jenna the next day. Just one line. I told her everything's on her now. That was it. No pleading. No guilt. Just the overdue transfer of responsibility. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Later that week, I drove back to the house. Not to stay. Just to collect what was still mine. Jenna wasn't home. Taylor wasn't either. I walked through the halls quiet now, clean. The tree was gone. The couch was bare. The echo of entitlement had left with them. I picked up the last of my things. A box of tools. An old photo. Receipts from years I couldn't get back. And when I locked the door behind me, I knew I wasn't returning. That house was no longer home. It was a ledger, paid in full. And now I ask you, reader, listener, stranger, was I wrong? To stop carrying people who mocked the weight I bore? To treat disrespect not as a phase, but as a boundary? Would you have stayed? Kept smiling through the insults? Kept paying? Kept driving? Kept fixing? Hoping one day they'd look up and say thank you? Or would you have left too? Because I didn't burn the house down. I just stopped fueling the fire. And in the ashes, I found myself again.